was just after 8 a.m. on a bright Monday morning. The roads were mostly empty, the summer sun already casting a golden glare over the quiet Georgia highway. It looked like a regular day, peaceful, uneventful. But for Officer Daniel Bradley, a local cop with a reputation for arrogance and a short fuse, the day was about to get interesting. Sitting in his patrol car on the side of the road, he sipped his coffee and stared at the passing cars with a hardened gaze. Known around the department for his aggressive stops and overuse of authority, Bradley believed he could spot trouble from a mile away. And that's when he saw it. A sleek black SUV rolling down the highway at a steady pace. No speeding, no swerving, not a single violation. But in Bradley's eyes, the problem wasn't how the car was being driven, it was who was driving it. Behind the wheel was a tall black man, wearing dark sunglasses, calm as ever. His posture was relaxed, confident, even slightly proud. To Officer Bradley, it didn't sit right. In his mind, a young black man driving a luxury SUV in a quiet town had to be up to something. He put down his coffee and muttered to himself, "Let's see who this guy thinks he is." Flipping on his sirens, Bradley merged onto the road and sped up behind the SUV. The lights flashed red and blue. The driver, unfazed, signaled and pulled over to the shoulder smoothly. No panic, no sudden moves. Inside that SUV sat Special Agent Marcus Johnson, a 12-year veteran of the FBI. He had served in high-level investigations across the country, from organized crime to counterintelligence. He was respected, intelligent, and more importantly, prepared. Like so many black men in law enforcement, he knew the tightrope he walked every day, and he knew what the stop was. As he came to a stop, Marcus kept his hands firmly on the wheel, a move that had become second nature. His training kicked in, but so did his instincts. He took a deep breath. He hadn't done a thing wrong, and yet here he was. Again, in his side mirror, he saw the patrol car door open. Officer Bradley stepped out, one hand already hovering near his holster, the other adjusting his belt. He walked with the swagger of someone who thought they were in control. Bradley approached the driver's window and knocked on it. Not gently, but with force. Marcus lowered the window halfway and calmly said, "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" Bradley didn't answer right away. He leaned in, scanning the inside of the vehicle, looking for something, anything, that could justify what he'd already decided in his mind. "You in a hurry?" Bradley finally said, voice sharp. "You were driving kinda suspicious." "Suspicious?" Marcus replied, keeping his tone respectful. "How so?" Bradley ignored the question. "License and registration." Without hesitation, Marcus handed them over, along with his FBI identification. Bradley glanced at it, then smirked. "FBI? You serious?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir. I am. Special Agent Marcus Johnson, out of the Atlanta field office." But Bradley was already shaking his head. "You got this online or something. You really expect me to believe you're FBI?" In that moment, Marcus knew exactly what was going on. He'd seen it before. The badge, the years of experience, the federal title. None of it mattered to Bradley. He didn't see an agent. He didn't see a law enforcement brother. He only saw a black man in a nice car. Marcus sighed and thought to himself, "You picked the wrong one today." Officer Bradley stared at the FBI badge in his hand like it was some kind of prank. He twisted his lips into a skeptical smirk, glanced back at Marcus, and muttered, "All right." Marcus remained calm, his hands still resting visibly on the steering wheel. His training told him not to escalate. His instincts told him he didn't need to. The situation was already out of control, just not in the way Officer Bradley thought. Bradley handed the badge back half-heartedly, clearly not convinced, or pretending not to be. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle," Bradley said sharply. Marcus turned toward him slowly. "May I ask why, officer?" "I told you. You were swerving. Looked like you might have been under the influence. I need to check the vehicle." That was a lie, and both of them knew it. Marcus's heart rate remained steady. He wasn't just a field agent. He was a professional interrogator, a behavioral analyst. He had interviewed career criminals, cartel leaders, and double agents. He could see the lie written all over Bradley's face, the nervous blink, the flexing jaw, the fake confidence. But what cut deeper than any of that was the fact that none of his accomplishments mattered right now. Not the FBI title, not the badge, not the years of service to his country. All Officer Bradley saw was what he wanted to see. Marcus responded firmly but respectfully. I haven't broken any traffic laws. I wasn't swerving. I wasn't speeding. And without probable cause or a warrant, you don't have the right to search my vehicle. Bradley scoffed. Now you're going to lecture me on the law? You sure you're not just pretending to be FBI? Marcus didn't respond to the bait. He had no intention of making this worse, but he also wasn't about to let this man violate his rights. Bradley stepped back and reached for his radio. Dispatch, I've got a non-compliant driver here. Might be under the influence. Requesting backup. Marcus almost laughed. Backup? For what? A calm, cooperative man with credentials. But he also knew how dangerous this could become. When false narratives like non-compliance hit the radio, things escalate fast. And when more officers arrive, they don't always question the first story they hear. Marcus slowly reached toward his dashboard and tapped a small black button, activating his dash camera's audio. Everything that happened from here on out would be recorded. Bradley didn't notice. He was too caught up in proving a point, in showing dominance. That much was clear. I need you to step out of the vehicle now, Bradley repeated, hand dangerously close to his holster. Marcus took a deep breath. Let me show you something, officer. He moved slowly, clearly, deliberately, and reached into his inner jacket pocket. From it, he pulled a second leather case. This one bore the gold-trimmed insignia of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He flipped it open and held it out where Bradley could see the photo ID, badge number, and official DOJ seal. This is my federal badge, Marcus said, voice calm but firm. I'm a special agent assigned to counterintelligence. You are detaining me without cause. And I'm telling you right now, you are violating my constitutional rights. There was a pause, the kind that feels like it lasts forever. The heat from a morning sun was nothing compared to the tension hanging in the air. Bradley's smirk finally faded. He leaned in again, this time taking a real look at the ID. The color drained from his face. Marcus didn't break eye contact. His tone sharpened. I suggest you look very carefully, because what you do next might change your entire career. There was a long pause, one of those silences so heavy it practically buzzed in the air. Officer Bradley stood frozen, his eyes darting across the FBI badge in Marcus's hand, then back to his face. The smirk he wore just moments earlier was gone, replaced by something else, realization, and maybe fear. He tried to play it cool, but his voice cracked just a little when he finally spoke. I didn't realize you were I thought. Marcus didn't let him finish. You thought what? He asked, his voice no longer just calm. It was sharp, precise, authoritative. That a black man in a suit and a nice SUV couldn't possibly be federal law enforcement? You thought I stole this car? Made a fake badge. Bradley shifted uncomfortably, his hand now fully away from his holster. His shoulders slouched ever so slightly. The body language of someone who just figured out they were no longer in charge. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful, Bradley muttered. Yes, you were, Marcus replied bluntly. And you still are. Because even now, you haven't admitted you had no reason to pull me over. It was no longer a conversation between a civilian and a cop. Now it was agent to officer. Equal badges. But only one of them had used theirs with integrity. Then came the unmistakable sound of approaching sirens. 2 more squad cars pulled up behind Bradley's cruiser, lights flashing. Backup had arrived. 2 officers stepped out, one of them a sergeant with stripes on his sleeves. As they walked up, Marcus stayed seated, his badge still visible in his hand. Bradley turned and waved them off nervously, trying to control the narrative before it got worse. We're all good here, he said quickly. Just a misunderstanding. But it was too late. The sergeant, a graying officer with a more seasoned presence, glanced at Marcus's credentials and immediately straightened up. Special Agent Johnson, he asked, recognizing the name and the badge. Is everything all right, sir? Marcus nodded politely. Yes, Sergeant. I'm fine now. But I'd like to report the conduct of this officer who stopped me without cause, ignored my identification, and attempted to search my vehicle illegally. The sergeant's eyes narrowed. Understood. He turned to Bradley with a hard look. Is that accurate? Bradley opened his mouth, then shut it. He had no defense. Not with dash cams rolling. Not with 2 federal credentials in play. And definitely not with his own body cam capturing every word he had said. Marcus stepped out of the vehicle slowly, standing tall. I've already activated my dash camera, and I've made a call to my supervisor at the Atlanta field office, he said calmly. I'll be filing a full report with your department, the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility, and, depending on how this is handled, possibly the Justice Department. Officer Bradley looked like he wanted to melt into the pavement. The confident, cocky cop who swaggered up to Marcus's window just minutes ago had been replaced with a man realizing the walls were closing in. I didn't mean anything by it, he stammered. Marcus looked at him one last time. You didn't need to say anything. Your actions said it all. The other officers remained silent. Even they knew that this wasn't just a bad stop. It was a reckless display of bias and power. And they knew it was about to have serious consequences. The power had shifted. Completely. But Marcus wasn't done. He calmly pulled out his phone, took photos of the patrol cars, recorded badge numbers, and documented the incident methodically, professionally, and without emotion. He had done nothing wrong. But now, he would make sure this wouldn't happen to someone who couldn't defend themselves the way he could. The next 24 hours moved faster than Officer Bradley could have ever imagined. After the backup officers arrived and witnessed the scene for themselves, there was no denying the truth. Bradley's body cam had recorded everything, from the aggressive window tap to his dismissal of Agent Marcus Johnson's FBI credentials to the false claim about swerving. And worse, his radio call falsely labeling Marcus as non-compliant was documented and flagged by dispatch. Marcus, meanwhile, had already contacted his FBI supervisor as promised. The Bureau didn't take this lightly. By the time Marcus returned to his office, he was sitting across from a federal oversight committee and recounting every detail. He handed over dashcam footage, filed a formal complaint, and sent copies to the Office of Professional Responsibility. This wasn't just about a traffic stop anymore. It was about holding someone accountable, not just for bias, but for abusing the power of the badge. The very next morning, Officer Bradley was called into his precinct, not for duty, but for questioning. Internal Affairs launched an investigation within hours. The evidence was overwhelming. His own department was stunned at the lack of cause for the stop, the way he ignored a valid FBI badge, and the way he escalated a calm situation into a potential disaster, all based on a dangerous assumption. Within 48 hours, Bradley was placed on administrative leave without pay. And it didn't stop there. News of the incident spread fast. At first, it started inside law enforcement circles, whispers among officers, rumors around precinct coffee rooms. But then, it hit the local press. FBI agent profiled an unlawful traffic stop by local officer. The headline went viral. People demanded answers. Civil rights organizations got involved. Social media lit up with hashtags demanding accountability. Officer Bradley's name was now known, not for heroism, not for community service, but for profiling and power abuse. And while Marcus never spoke his name publicly, the footage and facts told the story louder than any words ever could. Bradley tried to defend himself at first. He claimed he followed procedure and that Marcus was uncooperative. But the footage didn't lie. Neither did the recordings. The world could see exactly how calm, respectful, and professional Marcus had been, from start to finish. Back at the FBI, Marcus received widespread support. His fellow agents stood behind him. His supervisors praised his restraint, his professionalism, and how he turned the moment into a teachable example instead of a violent confrontation. Still, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened. What if I hadn't had my badge on me, he told a colleague. What if I hadn't stayed calm? What if someone else, someone younger, someone without training, had been in that driver's seat? Those what-ifs kept him up at night. So Marcus decided to do more than file a complaint. He began speaking publicly. Quietly at first, at community meetings, at law enforcement forums, at civil rights panels. This isn't about one officer, he said at one gathering. It's about a culture that allows bias to feel like authority, that allows suspicion to override professionalism, that allows some officers to assume that people like me, black, confident, successful, don't belong. His words hit hard, and they stuck. As for Officer Bradley, the investigation concluded with a scathing report. He had violated department policy, shown clear bias in the field, and demonstrated an inability to de-escalate, all while wearing a badge meant to serve and protect. He was suspended indefinitely, pending further disciplinary action and possible termination. But more importantly, he was no longer feared, no longer untouchable. The fallout from a traffic stop was loud, public, and far-reaching. But for Special Agent Marcus Johnson, it wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about revenge. It was about something much deeper: change. When the incident hit the national news cycle, Marcus was offered interviews with major media outlets. Many wanted him to get angry on camera, to yell, to shame, to play into the drama. But Marcus didn't do any of that. Instead, he sat down, looked into the lens, and told the truth. "This isn't about me being an FBI agent," he said calmly. "It's about what would have happened if I wasn't. What if I were just another black man driving to work? What if I didn't have a badge? Would I have been arrested, harmed, killed?" That truth hit people hard, because Marcus knew his title protected him. In that moment, on that road, his badge had been his shield. But not everyone has one. Not every black man pulled over in America has a federal ID to flash when things go sideways. And that, he realized, was the most dangerous part of all. What started as one traffic stop turned into something bigger. Within weeks, Marcus had become a voice in national conversations around police reform, racial profiling, and law enforcement accountability. Community organizations reached out, asking him to speak at youth centers, schools, even churches. People didn't just want to hear about what happened. They wanted to understand it. "I didn't get pulled over because I did something wrong," Marcus told a group of high school students at a community event. "I got pulled over because someone looked at me and saw a stereotype instead of a person. And that could happen to any one of you." His words were powerful, not because they were loud, but because they were real. Marcus wasn't trying to be a celebrity or a hero. He was trying to be a mirror. He wanted people, especially those in law enforcement, to see the truth about how quick judgment and hidden bias can turn a routine stop into a national incident. He began working closely with local police departments and FBI training units, helping develop implicit bias training and real-life scenario programs. He pushed for reforms that required officers to confirm probable cause on camera before initiating vehicle searches. He fought to include civilian review boards in misconduct cases. And most importantly, he made sure Officer Bradley's case wasn't buried. While Bradley's suspension was the first step, Marcus knew too well that consequences often ended there. That's why he followed the case closely. After months of investigation, it was concluded that Officer Bradley had initiated an unlawful traffic stop based on race and appearance, ignored clear federal identification, lied on his dispatch call, falsely claiming noncompliance, attempted to perform a vehicle search without probable cause, demonstrated conduct unbecoming of an officer. The final result? Bradley was terminated from the department. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, but publicly, with a formal statement from the chief of police acknowledging the wrong and committing to reviewing department-wide practices. For many in the community, that outcome was more than justice. It was a sign, a signal that things were changing, even if slowly. In one interview, Marcus was asked, "Do you feel like you won?" He paused for a moment, then shook his head. "This isn't a game," he said. "I didn't win. A man lost his job, a community lost trust, and people got reminded that your skin color can still be seen as a threat. That's not a win. That's a wake-up call." His answer went viral. It reminded people that true justice isn't about punishment. It's about prevention. About making sure the next person doesn't have to pull out a badge to prove their worth. About creating a system where respect comes before rank. Marcus went on to write op-eds, participate in law enforcement policy reviews, and help train new FBI recruits on handling public interactions with empathy and clarity. He used his platform not to settle scores, but to build bridges. And people listened. Months later, Marcus found himself driving the same highway again. The sun was rising. The roads were still quiet. He glanced at his rearview mirror, not in fear, but in reflection. That stretch of road would always remind him of how quickly things can shift, how power, unchecked, can become dangerous, but also how one moment of courage, quiet, disciplined, focused, can spark lasting change. He wasn't just pulled over that day. He stood up, and because of that, policies were reviewed. A dangerous officer was held accountable. Conversations were started in communities that had stayed silent too long. And maybe, just maybe, the next young black man driving to work wouldn't be seen as a suspect, but simply as a person going about his day.